Sunday, December 15th, the Unitarian Church of Montreal, and I'm here engaged in my alternative spiritual practice of protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy, which include, but are not limited to, clergy misconduct of various kinds, including clergy sexual misconduct, and including some quite egregious clergy sexual misconduct. But today I want to talk about snow jobs in the context of clergy misconduct in particular, and perhaps other Unitarian Universalist injustices and abuses and how they're not dealt with properly according to the principles and purposes of Unitarian Universalism and their own claimed policies for dealing with injustices and abuses and so on. We're going to be talking about a Unitarian Universalist snow jobs. And here we have a pretty good example of a snow job right here. This is the wayside pulpit of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. It quotes Ferenc Dávid, also known as Ferenc Dávid, or Fraudulent, Unitarian minister from Romania, 1520 to 1579. So this is one of the early Unitarians in Romania who basically started the Unitarian Church in Romania in the 16th century. And the quote says, "We need not think alike to love alike." This is a snow job. This is a snow job because as much as Unitarian Universalists claim that they basically are loving even if people disagree, that's essentially what this says, that we can still be loving even if we disagree, even if we have different thoughts about subjects. When Reverend Ray Drennan had different thoughts about the interreligious event that I had organized, he expressed those thoughts in a very unloving way. Reverend Ray Drennan, being a fundamentalist atheist, and quite frankly a bigoted one at that, did not think alike with me in terms of having an interreligious celebration of creation that promoted care for the creation on days when there was a total solar eclipse in the world. According to Reverend Ray Drennan, and I might add other members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, this interreligious event was a cult. That's not very loving. That is the antithesis of loving, because when you label someone's religious activities as a cult, you are essentially saying that they are extremely dangerous, that this is a highly manipulative religious group, and so on. This is just one example of Reverend Ray Drennan and other Unitarians not thinking alike in a very unloving manner. Reverend Ray Drennan also labeled the religious experience that actually inspired Creation Day as your psychotic experience. I was trying to explain this religious experience to him in a calm and reasonable, rational way in a meeting with him, and he rudely interrupted me very angrily. His face was inches away from mine when he said it. He said, "You mean your psychotic experience?" And he then angrily insisted that I seek professional help. This is not very loving. Obviously, Reverend Ray Drennan, being an atheist, thought it was absolutely impossible that I could have had a revelatory religious experience of God. So in his mind, I had to be psychotic, delusional. It was simply not within his ability to believe that I might have actually had a revelatory religious experience. So in a very unloving manner, and an intolerant and abusive manner, he labeled it as your psychotic experience, demanded I seek psychiatric treatment. Now, he could have done that in a loving way. He could have thought Robin Edgar's mentally ill, Robin Edgar's suffering from psychosis or some other serious mental illness, and he could have presented that thinking in a much different manner. He could have said, Robin, I think perhaps, you might have suffered a psychotic experience. And I believe that it would really be good for you if you were to, perhaps see a psychiatrist and see what the psychiatrist thinks and take it from there kind of thing. But he didn't do that at all. No, and in a very unloving, abusive, angry manner, He rudely interrupted me as I was trying to explain my religious experience to him, saying, "Your psychotic experience," and as I have already said, demanded that I immediately seek psychiatric treatment. And he wasn't finished with that. In fact, prior to that, he started this whole meeting off coming into the meeting extremely angry and agitated and so on, because I had complained about the fact that in a very unloving manner, the board of the Unitarian Church of Montreal had banned Creation Day from being celebrated in the Unitarian Church of Montreal for a second time in an anti-democratic, secretive, in-camera meeting. I actually find it ironic because when I demanded that Reverend Ray Drennan explain what he meant when he said cult, he responded saying, "I mean a manipulative and secretive religious group." So he obviously meant cult in the worst sense of the word. Well, guess which religious group was manipulative and secretive in having a totally secret in-camera session of the board of the Unitarian Church of Montreal to ban Creation Day from being celebrated in the Unitarian Church of Montreal. So just another way in which Montreal Unitarians, who do not think alike with me, behave in a very unloving manner. The list goes on and on and on. This is just the earliest stages of this conflict. It's just a total snow job, this thing right here. The 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism call for respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The second principle calls for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The third principle calls for acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth within our congregations. Well, obviously, labeling Creation Day as a cult, banning it from being celebrated in the Unitarian Church of Montreal, did none of those things. Fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I was actually asking in a very polite, reasonable, rational manner for the Unitarian Church of Montreal to help ensure that my claimed revelatory religious experience was in fact responsibly investigated to see, to what degree it was valid.
You're not leaving a lot of room for people on the sidewalk.
I'm leaving as much room as that signpost right there, sir. So the guy's complaining about my tripod, but in fact it's not much further back than the signpost, which is right next to me here. Nonetheless, interrupting my video here, we'll try and wrap it up. The fourth principle, as I said, free and responsible search for truth and meaning. From the very beginning of this conflict, Montreal Unitarians have made no effort to engage in a free and genuinely responsible search for the truth and meaning of my revelatory religious experience, whether or not Creation Day is a cult, whether or not my revelatory religious experience is actually a psychotic experience, whether or not Reverend Ray Drennan's intolerant and abusive behavior is in fact intolerant and as abusive as I say it is. No Unitarian Universalists have gone to great lengths to cover up and hide the truth, to willfully ignore the truth. Again, this is a snow job. That's what snow jobs are all about, hiding the truth, putting up a facade, putting up this fake, sham image that is not, in fact, a reflection of the reality behind the snow job. It is an attempt to obscure the truth and hide it from view. Fifth principle, right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and society at large. Well, I could just go on and on and on about how Unitarian Universalists have made a total mockery of that principle, not the least of it being in their repeated attempts to shut down this protest. I mean, I am exercising my right of conscience in one of the last resorts of the democratic process, which is peaceful public protest. Peaceful public protest is part of the democratic process in society at large, and I'm doing it right outside this Unitarian church, and yet Montreal Unitarians have repeatedly misused and abused the law, repeatedly called in all kinds of false allegations about me to the police to try and get the police to get rid of me. Instead of engaging in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning by entering into dialogue with me, instead of practicing justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to try and resolve this conflict with Rob and Edgar. We don't want to determine whether or not the slogans on his picket signs are actually true and maybe we have some serious problems. No, we're just going to shut Rob and Edgar up by using the Canadian Criminal Code and other police harassment to get rid of them. So now we're on to the sixth principle. If I remember correctly, the sixth principle calls for working towards world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Another huge snow job, because the Unitarian Universalist religious community makes zero effort to work towards peace, liberty, and justice within the Unitarian Universalist religious community. Okay, maybe I'm overstating things a little bit. There may have been a few efforts, and there may be some happening right now, but they have not resulted in peace, they have not resulted in liberty, quite the opposite, and they have not come even close to justice yet. So far, what few efforts have actually been made, and they really are few, in real terms, the Unitarian Church of Montreal and the Unitarian Universalist Association and the larger Unitarian Universalist religious community have done next to nothing. Pardon me? Unitarian Universalists, as I have said, they've done next to nothing to work towards peace with me, to work towards justice for me and other victims of clergy misconduct, and they've repeatedly tried to shut me up, to suppress my right to express myself, to deprive me of liberty. In fact, by bringing criminal charges against me, they've actually tried to put me in jail. That is not exactly liberty, is it? So now we're on to the seventh principle, the final principle of Unitarian Universalism, which is basically just a general call for respect for the interdependent web of all existence. So it's basically a general, overall call for respect for everything. Well, guess what? The Unitarian Universalists, in the way they have behaved towards me, for the most part, with few exceptions, total mockery of that principle. And they don't even seem to understand just how interconnected things are. We can talk about the internet alone. That's a very interconnected communication system. Extremely interconnected. The Unitarian Universalists have very little respect for, how that can affect their community. But that's just a small part of the interconnected web of all existence. This video is going to be a YouTube video. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on the interconnected web of all existence. And it's going to reveal in some small way how Unitarian Universalists engage in snow jobs. And I think we're wrapping it up. So one more time, this sign, this is a snow job. The Unitarian Universalists who do not think alike with me have expressed their disagreement in incredibly unloving manners. They've expressed their disagreement with intolerance, with bigotry, with even hate, with threats of physical violence, with actual physical violence, with theft of my picket signs, with repeated calls to police, with slanderous and libelous lies about me, and so on, and so on, and so on. And we're talking about just me. I mean, there's many, many other people who Unitarian Universalists have expressed their different thoughts, their disagreements, in a very, very unloving manner. And every single time that I've complained about this, where I've said, you know what, you're not expressing your different thoughts in a loving way. In fact, you're being extremely insulting, you're being rude, you're being verbally abusive. When it's been Unitarian Universalist clergy, like Reverend Ray Drennan, like Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, like Reverend Cynthia P. Kane, and the list just goes on and on and on. But those three in particular, because I filed formal complaints about the fact that when they did not think alike with me, when they did not think alike with Republicans, when they did not think alike with Roman Catholics, and so on, they were very, very unloving in their expression of their thoughts. And guess what? The Unitarian Universalist Association, the Unitarian Church of Montreal, and numerous individual Unitarian Universalists, when I expressed this disagreement in a reasonable manner, because I did, responded in an incredibly unloving manner. Starting with simply totally ignoring everything I said. That alone is not loving. Just totally ignoring someone, refusing to even acknowledge that they have expressed a different thought than yours, that's not loving. But it goes beyond that. They actually condone the unloving behavior of Reverend Ray Drennan, Reverend Victoria Weinstein, Reverend Cynthia B. Kane, and again, the list goes on and on and on. So that's it. I think we're going to wrap this up. But this sign right here, which is almost a creed of Unitarian Universalism, is an empty snow job in terms of how Unitarian Universalists behave towards me and numerous other people who they disagree with. That's it for today, for now.